All right, I would like to call this meeting to order of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Transportation Advisory Committee. It is 1:30 on April 18th. We're going to go around the room and do introductions and then make sure we have a quorum for today's meeting. My name is Gail Sturdivant. I'm the Acting Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs and the Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. Going around the room and to my right.
Hello, this is Kathleen Collins from CDOT Statewide and Regional Planning.
Howdy, everyone. Jeff Guthrie, Region 2 Planner.
Lindsay Hawkes, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Lachelle Davis, CDOT Region 2 Local Agency Manager.
Darren Horstmeyer, Community Planner, Schriever Space for Space.
Line Rail Transit Division Manager, Mountain Metro.
Allison Burns, Grants Analyst at Mountain Metro.
Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator, PPACG.
John, PPACG.
Janelle Miller, PPACG.
Jess Bechtel, PPACG.
Okay, great. Thank you. I can see some of the folks online and I can start calling them up. And I think he's given me the whole list. All right, we're going to start at the top of the list as I see it. Ben Sheets.
Hello, my name is Ben Sheets. I'm with the City of Fountain Engineering Department.
Okay, Ben. I can't see your last name. I know it starts with an S from Woodland Park.
Ben Schmidt, Public Works Director, City Woodland Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Aaron.
This is Aaron Busto with Federal Highways.
Okay, Casey.
Good afternoon, Casey Fortman, PPACG.
Okay, Dawn.
Dawn Collins here with the Town of Palmer Lake.
Great, thanks, Dawn. John.
John Hall with Colorado Department of Transportation.
Okay, Molly. Does it say Molly? Millie, I'm sorry. See, I can't really see that far. I apologize. Millie?
Hi, Millie Cruz from Drive Clean, Colorado.
Okay. Chris?
Chris Padilla from Colorado Springs Airport.
Great, thanks, Chris. Rob?
Hello, Rob Fry, CDOT, Planning Environmental.
Thanks, Rob. And then Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Chavez, Transportation Planning Manager, El Paso County.
Great to see Victoria and everyone else online. Anyone else in the room that needs to introduce themselves? All right, it appeared to me that we had a quorum. If I could just look at the PPACG staff to confirm that's the case. So we have a quorum. We're moving on. Next item is the agenda approval. The agenda has been distributed in advance of this meeting. Hopefully everyone had the opportunity to take a look at it. If so, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda or ask for a proposed modification.
This is Lan. I move to approve.
Thank you, Lan.
This is
Rob,
Dawn Collins. I'll second that.
Okay, Don, thank you. I do see a hand by Rob. Before we take a vote, Rob, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I would just say both John Hall and myself need to leave at 2:30. So action item D, if we can at least address that before both of us have to jump off, that would be great.
Okay, I don't see us having any issues getting there well before 2:30 and having plenty of time to talk with your item.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. So we have a first a motion to approve the agenda is published first by Lan Rao and second by Don. Any further comment? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, the agenda is approved. All right, we're going to move on to public comment and presentations. Jared, I'm going to look to you. Did anyone sign up or has indicated online that they would like to make a public comment?
Madam Chair, we did not receive any advance requests or submitted public comment.
Great, thank you. Anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment or presentation for an item that is not currently on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 4, approval of the minutes. Again, the minutes were distributed to the group. Hopefully had the opportunity to look at them. I'm going to open up the floor for any amendment to the minutes or a motion to approve the minutes as published.
This is Lan, move to approve.
Great, thank you, Lan. I have the motion to approve the minutes. Anybody else?
Ben Schmidt, City of Woodland Park, I second.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. So we have a motion from Lan, a second from Ben Schmidt from Woodland Park. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Any opposed say nay. All right, the minutes are approved. I'm going to turn it over to PPACG staff for the Board of Directors report.
Thank you. So at our board of directors, we did have a few items that were transportation related. The board did, through the consent items, approve the TIP amendment to add RPP funding last month that we'll hear a little bit more about later in this TAC meeting, actually. We did have a presentation on the South Powers Extension Corridor study that garnered quite a bit of discussion and questions from the board members. We also had two presentations, one on the active transportation plan that is being worked on by Olson along with PPACG. Jason O'Brien is the project manager for that effort. And then we also had an update on our crash study. Also Jason O'Brien working with Olson on that as well. And that is looking at sort of the causes and trends in major crashes in the region, specifically from 2020 to now. And some interesting data or some interesting information that they've uncovered through that study that will come back to TAC, I believe, next month. Is that correct? Okay. So you will hear more about that, but if you are interested in either of those items, we do have the active transportation workshop here with our TAC on Monday. But if you're interested in either of those items, please let us know. We'll get you some additional information.
Great, thank you. Any further questions for Danelle or any of the other PPACG staff? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to item 6A, election of officers. Or I'm sorry, we need to replace the second vice chair.
You already have something ready.
And I think this was a discussion item last month, but I believe
No, I think we railroaded somebody last month.
I heard
and,
they did not attend.
And so this is to remedy that railroading and go through a process by which we can perhaps find somebody else. And unless there's been a change of heart and they do want the position, we're coming back to it. So go ahead, Jess. I'm sorry.
Nope, you covered it. So just need a nomination and for someone to be voted in as the new second vice chair for the TAC. So with that, if anyone wants to volunteer or wants to be nominated, now's the time.
My understanding was that there was some discussion about making sure that it was represented by somebody other than the city and the county. So the victim is looking for a nomination, people. You guys were all here and talked about it.
It's really fun. And it's the second vice chair, right?
It is
kind of like being like the Speaker of the House.
It is the second vice chair. So you've got myself for the chair. Victoria is the first chair.
Yeah.
We are looking to somebody sit in that second chair if for some reason they were needed, if Victoria and I were not available.
Mostly it's a quick review of the TAC agenda. Once a month, we send it to all the officers, and outside of that, just in case you have to film.
Yeah. You know, on the off chance a really well thrown grenade takes both the chair and the vice chair out, that's when you'd be step up. You know, you're the designated survivor. You're off to the side. Anybody at all. Anybody. Anybody?
It cannot be her.
Yeah.
It can't be. I know, otherwise I told her she was doing it. So, Ben, Don, would any of the three of you be willing to step up and nominate yourselves or volunteer yourselves for nomination? Or I'm gonna ask Victoria to throw somebody under the bus. I know she can do it. Lan's too nice.
I just, this is Dawn, and being that I am in an interim fashion, I just don't want to do that to whoever's coming in behind me.
That's
In an
that's
unknown
fair,
time,
Don.
so,
I appreciate
yeah.
that. And I think this
Thank
is
you.
like your second or third meeting that you've ever attended, at
That's
least in this
correct.
round,
Thank you.
right? So, Ben Schmidt or Ben Sheets, would either of you be willing to volunteer to be the second vice chair?
This is Ben from the city of Fountain. I respectfully decline. But it is my understanding in my absence last month, my name did come up, which was surprising.
This is Ben Schmidt from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ben. No.
This is Ben Schmidt from City of Woodland Park. We're pretty busy up here, but since I'm the last one there, I would volunteer to step up into that position since no one else wants to.
Quick, hurry up and vote before he
Okay.
changes his mind.
Okay. I'm now closing nominations. All in favor of having Ben Schmidt as the second vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Ben, thank you so much for stepping up. We really appreciate you. And it really is as simple as responding to one email. And the good news is Victoria and I usually respond pretty quickly, and you may not even have to do anything unless, again, something happened. And she and I decided to go on vacation at the same time and unavailable. It's
That
way
sounds
better
great.
than
Thank
a
you for
grenade
support.
going off when we're together. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Sorry,
We're going to move on to
I might have
item
been overly dramatic. I'm sorry.
shocking. Item 6B, it's supposed to be 5310 funding recommendations. I will point out, there was a memo in your packet. We did have some follow-on questions from our meeting from the past couple months. I will let you know that Mountain Metro and myself have worked with Laura and the rest of the PPACG staff on this memo. It is in front of you in hard copy, and it will be reflected in the minutes as the revised item for this area. So Laura, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else beyond that. So those of you online, you're going to be emailed this memo with the revisions on it. I believe in general, Laura, there was a minor math correction, and we really it's a table of clarification on page 2 of the memo. Because if you recall, a couple months ago, we really questioned what monies were going into which area, and because originally when that was presented, they were kind of commingled. So I know Mountain Metro and myself, we were happy with it. I don't know if you have questions for Laura, if there's anything else you want to say about it.
No, I hope I addressed everybody's concerns, and thanks to City of Colorado Springs and MMT for helping me clear up some of these questions. We did complete a 30-day public comment period back that was opened on March 13th, and we did receive 2 public comments. One is actually applicable to the AAA funding, so that will be addressed in a different meeting with the Regional Advisory Committee meeting. And then another one was just from a resident asking whether the funding could be utilized in a specific area, which it is not eligible. So I'm just asking for a recommendation to the PPACG board for the distribution of these funds, the 5310 and PPRTA funds for Envita and Silver Key.
Any questions for Laura or a motion?
Madam Chair, I have a comment. I just want to express my appreciation to Laura for being open, and it's the same information, different format, And she is very open and very patient through this process. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know that you've done a lot of work on this in the last couple days. So thank you. All right, anything else? And any other questions, comments, or a motion on this item for the 5310 recommendation?
This is Lan, move to approve.
Thank you, Lan. Do I hear a second?
This is Dawn with Palmer Lake. I will second that.
Thank you. So we've got a motion from Lan, a second from Dawn. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
I
Any opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's recommendation for approval. We're going to move on to item 6C, Long Range Transportation Plan Update. Danelle?
Yes, thank you. Just getting to my packet in the place. We did bring this, we have a standing LRTP update every month for the TAC, but we did bring this into the action items for today, specifically because we would like to gain some guidance from the TAC or have some discussion that will lead to some guidance. And specifically that what we're asking for guidance on is the unfunded project list. We know that there are more needs in our community and in our MPO region than just is reflected in the draft fiscally constrained list. However, because of the way that we selected projects and we asked for projects through the call for projects, we're a little bit light in that unfunded project list. We feel that the unfunded project list does not reflect everything that is needed. So for the first item, I would like to note that there were some projects in the fiscally constrained list in the draft that were not perhaps fully funded. That is that when the project was submitted in the call for projects, the application had a larger cost estimate than perhaps we allotted in the fiscally constrained list. What we could do is put the remainder of that cost estimate in a phase 2 project on the unfunded list, just to reflect that larger number. We could also ask for jurisdictions to submit additional projects to create an unfunded list. But we wanted to bring this to everybody's attention and just ask you if you have thoughts, if you'd like to discuss further, if you'd like to go back and look at the project list. We are open to various options. We really want the LRTP to reflect what we know that the estimated funding is not going to fulfill everything that the region needs.
I have an initial comment. I think when we worked really hard on this first effort, we were really focused on those year bands for the greenhouse gas modeling with these, and we didn't really address unfunded needs, as you were just stating. Does that have an impact on the greenhouse gas modeling if we were to put more projects on the unfunded list?
It does not. Unfunded projects are not eligible for TIP funding, and thus they would not be part of the greenhouse gas modeling effort. It would really be just to make the public, CDOT, FHWA, everyone aware of additional needs that are existing in the community.
And then could you maybe remind me of something then, with those jurisdictions that are in PPRTA? I think you pulled all the A-list projects in, but I don't think you pulled any of the B-list projects in because there is no funding. So that, I would say, for the city, Colorado Springs, that might be the easy way to capture, and probably the county to capture our unfunded needs. And it might apply to some other jurisdictions as well.
Absolutely. That is a very good suggestion. There are a few projects that probably were submitted by the jurisdictions and are in the fiscally constrained list, but I think that number is small.
Okay. Yeah, Victoria, do you have any other thoughts on that? I think this has probably the most impact on the city of Colorado Springs and the county, but definitely want to hear from others as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to put the B-list projects in. I also think it's a terrific idea to put the phase 2, because I know that both of us went through and really cut our project list down. I also think there were a lot of projects that we just sort of zeroed out. So those should probably go back in as well.
Yeah, so Victoria, I think maybe we start with the getting the B list, and then you and I think our jurisdictions would have to do a scrub, because I think we made sure everyone else's requests were included.
Might be, I'm kind of hoping PPACG has those and could do it for us.
We can do that for you, yes.
Thank you, because I was thinking, because it really was Victoria and I think they did the scrub on it, and I'm like, I wasn't sure how we were going to be able to do anything else.
This is true. No, we can provide you a draft unfunded list. And to your point, all of the other jurisdictions were included in the fiscally constrained list. There were, I believe, 2 fountain projects that originally were not going to make the constrained list, and then we put them in under private funding. So I think it is going to be primarily City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County, as well as the PPRTA 3B list, unless any other jurisdictions have additional projects that you'd like us to add.
Well, I would open it up for the other jurisdictions to say if they thought that they wanted to add projects to an unfunded list. But I do recall the projects that we had in the first round, if they were not in the city and county, we made sure they made it within the fiscal constraints.
Yeah, was it Fountain that had a few projects they had to withdraw, so we can make sure we get with Ben and get those,
We
right?
withdrew them, but we added them back in as private funding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think one of them was the Southern Colorado Rail Park, if I recall.
I
Maybe
could go back to the list.
It was the road between I-25 and into the Southern Colorado Rail Park. It had a funky name for it. I think we made sure that was under private. Yes, but let's take a look at those for sure that were submitted. That would be great.
Yes,
And
I
so-
will take a look, and I will create a draft list and send it to the TAC for review.
Okay, great. And looks to me that that's all you needed was just the guidance.
Correct. Yep. Everything else in the memo is just a status overview. We are, just for everybody's awareness, having a workshop on the active transportation plan on Monday. We are also having a transit plan and specialized human services plan open house on April 30th at the, what does the CAB building stand for? City Administration Building. That's 4:30 to 6:30.
Okay. All right, and just to be clear for the guidance, it was to go back, do the PPRTA B list projects. And then projects that were not fully funded for the city and county, and looking at a phase 2 component of it, and then reevaluating those private funded projects. In particular, the ones for Fountain, but I think it may be worthwhile if we're going to look at this just to make sure there's nothing else that we put in that category that needs to be in the unfunded area.
Yes.
All right. Anything
Thank you,
else,
Madam
Victoria, you want to add other than those 3 items?
I do have one little thing to add, though I am much farther along in my major transportation corridor plan process at this point. So I also might want to see if there are any projects in my MTCP that I didn't have earlier.
That would be great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Victoria. Any other guidance? All
No,
right,
ma'am.
hearing none. Thanks, Victoria. I'm going to move on to item 6D, the TIP amendment, and I'm going to turn it over to Jess first.
Yes, thank you. So this TIP amendment to the 23-27 TIP is to address some RPP funds and adjusting those funds. And so in order for CDOT to award the Airport and Powers Interchange project, a couple of actions need to take place and need to go through the committee and board approval process. We sent out the amended packet and the memo detailing those changes earlier this week. And so John Hall is on the line if he wants to speak to this project a little more, or if there's committee questions specific to how and why these funds are moving around. John, did you want to jump in?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The first thing I'd just like to clarify is that the RPP funds that we have are already approved. So the lines 1 and 2, as you have on the screen there, those were approved. Line 1 back in April, back in April, just days ago, really, or a week or so ago on the board meeting, and then the use of the other RPP funds.
Those are approved in December, yeah.
Yeah, those were done in I think it was the January board was actually approved. So we have the CDOT Transportation Commission approved the line 3 and 4 funding that's shown on your screen there today. It was formally approved. So that is 2.2 and change million dollars of the contingency funding pool that's available for 10-year capital fund projects. And again, I should have clarified it for starters that this is for the Airport and Powers Interchange project, which is it's the top priority on the 10-year capital list. So $2.2 million of additional contingency funds. The $9 million though, the 10-year capital program, other than those contingency funds, the 10-year capital program, the guidance is that has to stay within the exact same control totals. So in order to award this project, we need $9 million additional. And what was proposed and approved by the CDOT or the Colorado Transportation Commission was to reduce the allocation to the US 24 Garrett to Woodman project on the 10-year plan by $4.5 million, and reduce the allocation for US 24 and Ridge Road by $4.5 million. And as you can see on the screen there, the results of the Garrett to Woodman, that project will need to be delayed in terms of construction until 2027. That was probably the realistic schedule anyways to begin with some of the environmental and other concerns. I shouldn't say environmental concerns, but environmental clearance processes and all those things that needed to go into that project, right-of-way acquisition and all that. On the Ridge Road project, it's a little more unknown right now what the impacts would be. Construction was intended to be 2027 or later anyways, and right now the previous $33.4 million budget, we certainly didn't feel that was significantly low. So it just puts that a little more in risk, but we just started designing. Hopefully that explained everything I need, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, John. And I did speak with Shane Ferguson about this potential possibility last week and then earlier today as he was going to the Transportation Commission. So I appreciate the further detail on that. Any questions for John on this? And if there are none, then I would be looking for a motion to approve this TIP amendment.
Gail?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to ask John, what do you think the likely impacts are going to be to that Garrett Road project in terms of scope? I'm not so worried about the timing, but I am a little worried about the scope.
Well, in a worst case scenario, it could result in needing to pull back some of the limits. We're going to have to either find more money in the out years of the 10-year plan as it gets refreshed, or there could be, it is possible for some scope reduction in terms of probably the north end, I would say. But I don't know. I don't know the exact, cutting back the limits though is definitely something that would be possible.
Any other questions, Victoria?
No, but please don't take it personally if I vote no, because that is such an important project for Eastern El Paso County.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or a motion?
Yeah, sorry if you don't mind, this is Rob Fry. I do want to say, Victoria, that we are committed to delivering the 10-year project. Sorry, you don't need to look at my mouse pad. CDOT is committed to delivering the 10-year project. I just want to state that this is just the circumstance that we're in right now, and I know everybody knows that. So just want to make sure it was clear that we are not actively looking at reducing scope. We're still committed at delivering this along with Ridge Road. It's just one way that we can advance this project today rather than delaying Airport Road and State Highway 21. So just want to make that comment. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard for me to envision how we would reduce the scope and not still have the bottleneck problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we'll, I don't have a crystal ball. We'll find a way to fill that gap. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, or a motion? John?
Well, not a motion, because apparently I'm not allowed to make those. But I think, Rob and John, is it safe to say that one or two things will either happen, that the project would be made whole and it would then not actually have a scope reduction, but a schedule adjustment where it would go out further in time? So the bottleneck that Victoria's talking about will still be addressed, just not as soon as we'd like because we have limited funds. Or if you do have a scope reduction, is it again safe to say that a new project would be created, maybe a Garrett to Woodman phase 1 or whatever, Garrett to Woodman phase 1 and then a Garrett to Woodman phase 2, but we would change the things. I think what we're looking for is to get in some sort of comfort level that CDOT, you have said you're committed to doing it. So I think that comfort level with being committed to do it goes up if you either say it's the scope by continuing to have those on the books, the same project or the same limits on the books, either by a phase 1 or a phase 2 or a schedule adjustment.
Well, I think the way Rob put it was best, John. I think that we're committed to the project. The project description is not being changed in this project, in this process right now. But it's just the budget, and we're going to continue to look for ways to get the budget back up to where it needs to be. In all frankness, the previous budget was probably too low as it was. So funding will need to be found to make that project whole. And we're certainly committed to doing it. To working towards that end.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. Now, would somebody like to make a motion? All right, you people are killing me. And this is all serious, I really had to go through and read the bylaws. And in fact, we're going to be talking about them here, I think later in this, it's either today or in the next meeting. You are voting members representing your jurisdiction, so I would ask for your active participation in these discussions. I do try to lead it in a fashion where to know when it's appropriate to make those motions, but I do need your active participation. So I want to thank you in advance for taking that seriously. And I'm still looking for a motion on item 6D for the TIP amendment.
This is Lan. I recommend approval.
Thank you, Lan.
This is John Collins. I will second that approval for the TIP amendment.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that. So we have a motion from Lan, a second from Don. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, so the TIP amendment passes. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 7. Jared, the bylaws, which I had the pleasure of reading. Felt like I needed to go brush up on Robert's Rules of Order because it's
Yeah.
probably been since high school since I've read those.
Yeah, I'm glad you never mind. Would have been funny anyway.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Jared Werner, Public Information Officer at PPACG. So last month, the Board of Directors adopted a new set of bylaws. I would say nothing particularly groundbreaking. It was actually prompted by a transportation issue, and trying to make sure when the TPR boundaries, they were looking at all the boundaries throughout the state, and it could have been interpreted that jurisdictions who are a member of both Central Front Range TPR and the PPACG MPO area could, in theory, have had two voting members on stack. And so that was part of the changes at the bylaw level for the board. But we also took an opportunity when we were going through that to make other updates as we were going through. And as we did the board bylaws, after that was done, we decided it was kind of time to go through the rest of the committee bylaws at the same time. And so I attached in your memo, or I attached in your packet, 3 different attachments. One is a clean bylaws document of proposed changes. One is all the red lines of the changes. And then the third is a meeting procedures document, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail. But on the bylaws port itself, we made a few changes. These are not all of them. Most of the ones that I did not pull out on bullet points are going to be primarily editing, just minor formatting and details. But in terms of content, we did put in a few changes and putting more clarity on membership. The existing bylaws uses language that was really taken from our other PPACG committees, which are largely comprised of members of the public. And that is not the case with the TAC. Most of you are appointed by your jurisdictions, either in your job description or as other duties as assigned. And so we clarified some language on there just because of the uniqueness that is the TAC membership. Speaking of the second vice chair discussion from a couple action items ago, we did put in this scenario if for some reason no officers were present, chair or the first and second vice chair. We did put in a scenario how the meeting could take place with an acting officer if a quorum was otherwise present. And the way I put it in there, and I'm open to discussion, was just whoever's been on the TAC longest, you get to gavel the meeting into order. And the first agenda item is is selecting acting chair for that meeting. Yeah, that was no rhyme or reason to that other than we just needed a way for someone to say you're it. We did put a little bit of a conflict of interest definition in there, which we also put in the board, which is essentially saying that a conflict of interest in your personal or private capacity. Just because the way it was written, it was overly broad, and it could be saying is like, well, if we're awarding millions of dollars to a jurisdiction and you represent that jurisdiction, you would vote yes for it. By defining it as a personal or private conflict of interest, that would be, say, if you have a family member who is likely to benefit from a contract from said approval, we would ask that you please recuse yourself as a conflict of interest. We deal with this a little bit more on the PPRTA Citizens Advisory Committee because we do have several contractors and developers on that particular committee. And so while it's not a concern I have with TAC because all of you are employed by jurisdictions, if there is a situation that could come up that you would personally benefit, we just ask, but this clarifies that language. We also did some clarifying language to better define the boundaries. We're using Pikes Peak region interchangeably with Colorado Springs urbanized area. And because the TAC is very specific to the MPO region, we just want to make sure that we're defined and exactly what region we're talking about. And it was one part, and it was just interesting just going through the board bylaws and then the committee bylaws. The committee bylaws are incredibly challenging in terms of most of the committee bylaws require a 30-day notice. The board of directors only requires 10. And so we are changing that as we go through all of our committees to move that from a 30-day notice to a 10-day notice. We're also putting in language that would allow the board to make, as the governing body, that they could make the changes on their own without tax approval. So there's essentially 2 ways to do bylaws in the new version. Either the board says, here are your bylaws, enjoy, or the committee decides that we think we need to change these things and it goes to the board for approval. Right now, it's just written, it can only come from TAC, which puts the board into a little bit of a bind if they need to make any changes at the executive governing board body level. So those are the parts in the bylaws part. The bylaws also reference a meeting procedures document, which the board also adopted at their March meeting. And this pretty much just codifies some, I would say, ground rules on the expectations for meetings. And we did it in a way to where currently, if we make any changes to the bylaws, or if we make any changes to the meeting procedures, those are in the bylaws. And again, with the 30-day notice and everything else, it's incredibly difficult to change bylaws. By changing a meeting procedures document that everyone just references, makes it a little bit more flexible. So if situations come up, we had Zoom bombing early in the pandemic. We still have issues with, people speaking out of turn. And by putting in the standalone procedures document, it makes it easier for the bylaws to just reference that document, as well as to make changes to that document as needed. And some of the pieces of that procedure document, just the more defined expectations for remote participation in meetings for members and the public, codifying a public comment process. We had a process that I think we all just had used, but it was never on paper. So this puts actually what the process is. It also outlines if a meeting is changed due to weather or other factors, the process that we will generally try to follow if something happens. The biggest scenario I could see is all of a sudden we have a snowstorm. We will do our best, if we know about it in 24 hours in advance. But if it's within that 24 hours in advance, making sure we have what you guys can expect to hear from us if something happens. Snowstorm, utility outage would be another one where all of a sudden if we lost power, what do we do? And then there's a conduct section in there that is taken directly from our board of directors, but just essentially says, be nice to everybody. We're all part of a big happy family. So that's what all those materials say. We are still operating under the current bylaws, which would require 30 days. So this is not the start of the clock. This is not saying that we will be voting on this. There is no hard set deadlines on this, but we would like to get these in place. We're also open to any feedback you have. As the chair mentioned, if we need to put in some other language for members, we're happy to do so. But this is kind of the first shot at that. The earliest we could be voting on this would be the June meeting. But we don't have to do it. We could push it back if we need to.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate that. And I did get a chance to go through these. I thought most of the clarifications really made a lot of sense. I did have one question and I wanted to bring it up, maybe a discussion. If we could go to Article 5, Section 2. That says additional qualifications, I think is what it's titled. I know since you're also the driver of the computer, that's hard. It is additional criteria.
Yep. I apologize. Was there a question or?
Yeah, no, it did. I just
Okay.
wanted to wait till everyone got a chance to look at that and see it. So the one thing that I had is question both when I read this yesterday and even when I just saw it come back through again today, is if we should have and maybe this is already there because the person's been delegated by their jurisdiction to come and represent them, as somebody who has maybe some fiscal knowledge or the ability to do the fiscal planning for their jurisdiction. I don't know. There was just a financial piece of this that I just felt like was missing when I looked at it. But I also didn't know exactly. I don't like to bring up problems unless I have a proposed solution, or issues unless I have a proposed solution. But anyway, it's just something I wanted to throw out there for discussion for this group.
And I'm double checking that language is pretty much the only thing we changed from the current version is changing Pikes Peak region to Colorado Springs urbanized area. So I'd say that is a fairly common section in most of our committees where for our aging committees, they have to have we ask them to have a certain thing. So that is incredibly flexible depending on what the needs of the TAC are. And I think the board would be very amenable to hearing your hearing the tax input on that.
Yeah, would you want it to say demonstrate technical and or financial background?
No, I actually thought, I almost proposed language to strengthen the technical background, but then realized it probably was sufficient the way it was as I started thinking through it. It was really something more along the lines of really acting as have the authorization to act as the fiscal planning agents for their jurisdiction or something along that lines.
So it would be a C at
It
a,
would be a C, yes. My thing was always a new item. It wasn't changing the two items that were there. I just had a gut feeling that something was missing there. And maybe I'm overthinking this, but I would welcome others' input.
yeah, and if others are cool with this, again, there's no timeline on this. We can write up some draft language and bring it to you next month, but whatever
And I
you
think
guys want to do.
I think that would be great if we had the moment to be able to do this again. I know we had the packet and time as we were going through this, but I wanted to make sure I got a chance to read these. So this was the last part I got through, but that was the thing that kind of stood out to me. So if you would please PPACG staff make proposed language or some optional language, can hit that fiscal responsibility there. That would be great. And
Yeah,
I'd
that's
be
not-
happy to work with you between now and then as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem on our end. I will say we are unique in that we have members throughout the COG, a little bit different on the MPO side, but throughout the COG, we have the second largest city in the state, and then several towns and cities of 500 or less. So I would say on that particular thing, as long as the smaller jurisdictions were okay with that, but we could.
Let's definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I see Dawn has her hand up, so she may have a point to that. Dawn?
Yeah, I really just wanted to add, and thank you for recognizing it. As a smaller community, I just don't want to pigeonhole us that. I think if we can keep it vague enough that the participant, is part of or participates in the budget for the municipality, but may not be a deciding, decision maker. I think that's important so that we keep it open for depending on the staff member.
Well, great. Thanks, Dawn. And as we work with the PPACG staff too this next month and even before the next TAC meeting, we may just float that language out even earlier if we get the opportunity to get it before the packets come out. I think that might be helpful. I make it almost a electronic workshop.
I'm hearing open meeting.
You are very open meeting. I appreciate that.
I grew up with the electric company, so speaking my language.
All right. Any other comments, questions on this item? It was informational.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead, Lan.
Hi, Jared. Under section 8, conflict of interest on page 46 in the packet. Thanks for mentioning the PPRTA hack discussion. I just want to understand the abstention option is only available when there is a conflict of interest, or it is available at any time?
So, and because I know PPRT actually had this exact same discussion.
I also talked with
abstentions.
him about this yesterday. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, so because it was within the conflict of interest section, I would say that abstention would just be for conflict of interest. But that is something to where if the committee wants to say that, that's the only reason to have a abstention or some other thing, I think that would be up to the TAC to have that, to make that discussion. I don't think it's anything that's required on our end. Because I know some governing boards, and this is not a governing board, but some of them say that, if you abstain, it's a no. If you abstain, it's a yes. They have very clear what an abstention means.
Yes. So I also had a follow-up conversation with PPRTA about this because there are some very specific defining rules on when it can and can't, and when it can be used and what it really means, depending on your format of your meeting. It may actually be appropriate to define abstention because there has been a recent conflict. And we did have a vote not that long ago where we had a lot of abstentions, really for various reasons. I think if you go around and talk to folks that were involved in that, including myself, I think the point that was made in the PPRTA meetings that if you are here as a voting member, that you have a responsibility to vote. The questions come back if you abstain from it. A lot of people are abstaining because they feel neutral one way or the other and really indifferent about the decision and don't really necessarily want to sway it one way or the other without speaking. So if that's the direction we want to take, then we need to define it in these bylaws. Versus a conflict of interest. I think that if we want to abstain, I think that obviously makes sense. We need to do this, but we need to define whether or not you are allowed to abstain as a voting member. And the way this is written right now, how I read it is we are not allowed to.
That is exactly why I'm asking, because I did not know I had an option to abstain during that meeting. And since then, I've been reading Robert's rules as well. But I think for this packet, that's how I'm reading this as well. It's only under conflict of interest.
That's correct. And which is, we did not know at that time. Dawn, I see your hands up and I don't know if it was a new hand raise or this from your previous comment.
It was from my previous, but I do have a comment to this discussion, so it worked out that it was still up. From Robert's rules, and this just comes from my background, right? You, as a responsible member, you vote yes or no regardless, and the abstention would only be when there is a conflict, and that should be disclosed.
That is correct, unless, and as we've just gone through this, unless you define it differently in your bylaws, which would
And my
supersede
concern,
Robert's rules, right?
yeah, my concern to that would be like when we have like, some crickets going on as you had earlier, then we have no action because people
Yes.
just don't want to make a vote. So I don't see that as a constructive way to do business. Just a comment.
I would concur with you and wish I had read this portion of the bylaws and had this discussion a few months ago. Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
No.
All right, so Jared, I think there's just one item that we'd like
Wait,
to.
you've got Victoria.
Oh, I'm sorry, Victoria, I didn't see your hand up.
course. It was a literal hand up and not the virtual hand up. So sorry about that. On section 2, I think we've defined our area too narrowly because if you look at the administrative maps, the urbanized area is very small. The urbanizing area is a little bigger, and our actual MPO area is much larger. So I think our area needs to be the Pikes Peak MPO area.
That makes sense. And that was, and good catch. And partly the reason why throughout the rest of the document, yeah, we had region, which is whatever we define it as. But then, yeah, some of these other words to a specific meaning. So thank you, Victoria.
Welcome. And now I have one other comment about virtual meetings and the preference for it being in person. And I'm wondering, so just my 2 cents, obviously I attend these virtually a lot. It has so many benefits for me in terms of productivity. Obviously I speak up whenever I need to and participate greatly. And I would just love to hear other people's thoughts on the virtual option having to be, put in beforehand, surprise meetings come up that I, can attend an hour before the TAC meeting, that if I have to have that done beforehand, it makes it more difficult. And it's also just not productive. Our local road safety plan for El Paso County considers remote meetings as a way to enhance safety on the road, reduce trips, reduce greenhouse gases, and you'll get more complete and full participation if you give people this virtual option and not make it seem like a secondary, not as good way to participate in a meeting. So I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that, but I was kind of taken aback by that, and I found it to just be a little too constrictive.
All right, thanks, Victoria. Ben?
Sorry, Schmidt from City of Woodland Park.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I cannot see the last name and I can't tell which Ben it is, so I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, thanks. I just want to echo Victoria's comments. The hour of productivity I gained from not having to drive down the pass to attend these meetings makes my attendance of these a lot easier if we can still have that kind of primary virtual option.
Great, thanks you. Can I throw something out? And I 100% get the productivity issue, and I want to be sensitive to it. But I'm wondering if you are going to be a voting member attending remotely, could we ask that you guys are on camera so we can at least see you and feel like there's more active participation versus not being on? It's maybe an alternate way. Not having your camera on is an alternate way to maybe to facilitate the meeting and build maybe more of a coalition, get to know you a little bit better. I know it seems weird, but you do get to know and recognize folks a little bit better. And Victoria, you've been great about being on the screen today, and I have to tell you, I really appreciated that.
I'm happy to stay on screen. I have no issues with that. I just would hate to lose my remote option meeting. And I actually facilitate a committee that has chosen to only meet virtually. And that committee is very productive as well. So I thank you, Ben, for chiming in as well. I just would like us to really put some thought behind this one.
Okay, I'm more than amenable to change that language. I think that's actually come up because that has been an item a lot on the PPRTA Citizens Advisory Committee, and this is maybe a carryover comment related to that item, because I think when the bylaws were last looked at, virtual meetings weren't even an option. And I'm looking at Jared for his comment.
So looking at the TAC, yeah, the last time these were updated was July of 2019. But
Just in time.
Yep. So I pulled up.
Computers, do we have computers in 2019?
But I've pulled up the meeting procedures document, and I apologize. John and I were kind of sidebarring, so if it was addressed, and I apologize. Compared to the PPRT, this was kind of done in parallel. So by the same time PPRT was doing it, we were already kind of having these discussions on the PPACG side. But part of the remote operations is that, we're not saying no remote participation. And the preference is in person. But it is, to your point, if you are going to participate remotely, we just have a few things that we ask, and one of them is the camera on. And that's more than anything just a security issue. The way we have our team set up, because you all are part of other jurisdictions, I could log in. I'm going to pick on the Bens, because that way I don't have to pick on one of them specifically. But I could log in, say my name is so and so, and as long as my camera's not on and my voice is somewhat similar, you guys just think that someone has a cold, they could vote, and we would really have no idea, which is a little scary. I don't want to give anyone ideas. But that's part of the reason for a visual confirmation on that.
Well, I appreciate that. It is probably more valid reason than I like it, but still a good reason. But that makes sense. And again, I would be okay if we maybe do a modification, if you need to attend remotely, that we just ask that you're in a position where you could have camera on, or at least have visual confirmation that you are the voting member in advance if you happen to be traveling or something where you have connectivity issues and need to turn up your camera. John, it looks like you have your hand up.
So the sidebar that Judge Ito and I were just having was, again, this document that is referenced in the bylaws is the same document that is used for the board of directors, for everything. And so first off, I just want to make it clear to everybody, there's not a separate version of this document for TAC. So one, nobody in TAC was being called out. This was all part of the discussion for the board of directors there. The second thing is, we cannot make modifications to it because it is a board of directors document. That being said, we can have an understanding at the TAC. Yeah, for Section 2, we're not going to be quite as strict on some of these things. Now, again, Jared and I have maybe a little bit of difference of opinion here, but I just want to make it clear that, again, this is a document that is for the whole organization, not just TAC. So we can't just modify it. But what we can do is sort of look at some of these things and say, yeah, we definitely have a little different thing that's going on than the board of directors. So therefore, we could be very lax on that. And no one should feel that we are not allowing their participation, because we value getting you guys any way we can, and we know you're all busy. So if it's remote, that's far better than you not attending at all.
No, and I appreciate that clarification, John, because I read it, it was only applied to the TAC. So I'm glad you pointed out it was for the PPACG board as well.
This is an agency-wide document. So again, if the board of directors finds that they have an issue and they make an adjustment to this document, it will apply agency-wide. So we have to use our common sense to say, yeah, makes sense for elected officials who have to do this and that. Doesn't necessarily make sense for agency staff. So therefore, we can't change the rule because, again, only the board can do it. But we can certainly have our own sort of house rules, sort of like when you play Monopoly, I always get boardwalk, right? It's a house rule, everybody plays with it.
Well, and then could the friendly maybe adjustment on this is that leaving the encouraged to participate in person as is, and if you do need to attend remotely, that you will be requiring some visual confirmation.
Yeah.
And
I think that's appropriate.
Just leave it simple that, and then as you just said, we do what we need to do.
Right. There's lots of times I think Aaron Willis is joining us and it turns out it's Kathleen. You already made that joke? All right.
John and Jared,
Go ahead, Victoria.
is there a way that we could put a small section in our bylaws that explains how we're going to handle it at TAC? So that we're not changing the agency-wide procedure, but we do change it in our bylaws.
I would say I think that's definitely doable. I'm going up to the section that kind of references the encourage part. Because that would probably be the place we were going to change it. I overshot it. There we go. Committee members are encouraged to attend in person but may participate remotely. We can adjust that language. I don't think there's any problems on our end with that.
Okay. And I may have another question here, so just give me a moment. So, John, not to put you on the spot here, but could you look at the document, because the title is bylaws for the Transportation Advisory Committee. It doesn't, this is where I guess I'm confused for you.
So Jared, these are two separate documents, correct? There is the bylaws for TAC, and within that, it references another document. And that other document is the I forget the name of the document, but the operating procedures, and that is a separate document that again applies for the whole organization. And the reason for that is, again, now thanks to the new technology and getting Zoom to bomb and having people sign up for public comment and saying their name is Sig Heil, I think is what happened in
one of the L's,
Longmont or something like that, right? We need to have rules, because on one hand, you want to say, oh, well, this joker doesn't get to talk at all, but then you find you've violated their civil rights and their freedom of speech. So we have to be able to sort of not get into what they say or how they say it, but rather some other sorts of things. So we have to be very careful on how we do it. So that's why we have that second document. So did you call up the actual name of the second document and show them that there's two separate documents that we're talking about?
So I've got Article 4, Section 8, Conduct of Meeting is where we reference that second document, where it says Robert's Rules of Order as revised shall govern, except when other rules are set forth in these bylaws or have been adopted in the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments meeting procedures.
And then he was jumping over to another document, which is the meeting procedures document. So it's the meeting procedures document that I think that there was some issue with. So, and that's the one we cannot change. So if everyone's amenable to it when we come back, because I don't want to, keep you guys here for too long. When we come back to bring this, we can bring back your language that says, hey, we'd also like to have some sort of financial background or the ability to speak for your jurisdiction on a financial basis, as well as under the one section of attendance, we can soften that as well to make sure that everybody is. Because again, let's face it, if we've alienated the 3 people that are attending remotely, we probably wouldn't have a quorum. So we have to be flexible. And again, my apologies to the 3 of you. Our intent was not to call anybody out or make you feel like we're picking on anybody. It is, again, taking something that the board had developed and the board felt strongly about having, because again, if you're elected official voting on money, you can't have someone showing up with a blank screen that says Bob, right? You have to have the camera on, and they do like to have that. So that's the document, and that's why that document was so strong, because of what the board of directors had directed us to do, not in any way us calling out anybody and trying to force your participation in person. So again, my apologies for that confusion, and I think we can fix this and bring you back some draft language next month.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Anybody else? Any other comments, directions? All right, Jared, boy, you brought the longest item. You put us over the hour mark.
I apologize. I know we were shooting for a quick meeting, so we can keep going if you want to, but
I think we're
way to
going to
go,
move on
Jerry.
unless anyone has any other questions. All right, item 7B, tip updates.
I don't believe we have any large ones except for jurisdiction project review meetings are coming up in the next 2 weeks. So just make sure you're prepared to talk about where you're at with those projects. And then following, we'll be looking at roll forward. So kind of go hand in hand. That's it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jess. CDOT updates. I'm going to look for the folks in the room. Kathleen?
Is Aaron Willis online? Oh, I'm sorry.
This is Kathleen Collins, alias Aaron Willis. I want to first of all reintroduce our team that came to visit for today. We have Tess Ritchie, who is also our CDOT Region 3 and Region 5 planning liaison. We have interns with us, Robin Bardmesser and Spencer York. And then, of course, Phil, who's part of the planning liaison team for Pikes Peak here today. And so I was happy to have them here. Let's see.
Right here.
Scott. So in terms of stack updates, the April stack was canceled, and our next meeting is going to be in person on May 2nd, and we're going to be covering revenue projections to recommend advice to the TC, and Central Federal Lands is also going to be presenting about how they're coordinating with CDOT for the planning process. We also have a TPR administrator meeting, the first of its kind, that's going to happen on May 2nd as a result of the House Bill 23-1101 study. And then I know that there are some updates for TC that relate to Region 2, and I'll let Region 2 staff cover that. But also at April's meeting, we had Region 3 update, a STIP update with a public hearing, transit connection study, and other topics. And then let's see, I think the other thing is I'm going to be representing Phil here today because he's our bicycle advocate from CDOT. But the Bike to Work Day is going to be for most of Colorado on Wednesday, June 26th. Grand Valley Bike Month or Bike Day is going to be May 1st. So that's it for my updates.
I must say that I don't think there was any Region 2 staff able to attend this morning's TC meeting, so I can't provide an update on that. Sorry. Otherwise, so I can defer back to Kathleen for that if you have anything. Otherwise, I can say that all statewide, all the region planners and local agency team met earlier today to talk through an upcoming MMOF call for projects and the application process. And I can say that as far as next steps, look for at the May 2nd stack meeting, a presentation from Michael Snow And then the feedback from STAC will guide finalizing this whole process for MMOF May 16th. The Transportation Commission is supposed to adopt program distribution, so we will know funding projections. And then look for MMOF program guidance coming out towards the end of May. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
And sorry, Jeff, I don't mean to add on to that, but we are already programmed out with MMOF funds through, I think, 29. So for us, it's kind of a moot point for this tech.
And he mentioned a project that the TC passed related to Region 2.
Yeah, so I did get a text that the Powers and Airport, the contingency and the other has been approved by the Transportation Commission. So again, our TIP amendment that is in process is would reflect their action.
Thank you, and I apologize for having to step out for just a moment. Jeff, did you go in my absence or you did? Okay. Michelle? All right, sorry, going back to CDOT, I believe, was there other CDOT members online? Jared, could you help me confirm? I can't see any names now.
Madam Chair, I don't recognize any other CDOT members online. It looks like the ones we had for the initial agenda items have since dropped off.
Perfect, thank you. All right, our next standing item is 7D, the IIJA grant funding opportunities.
Thank you again. If I can get to what I need to get to. There aren't any new notices of funding opportunity that have opened in the past few weeks since our last TAC meeting that are specific to transportation. However, we do have included in the memo the opening or those that are open through USDOT as well as the ones that are upcoming. I will mention quickly that Karen Rowe, our regional grant navigator, is here. I know that she has been working really hard to reach out to all of our jurisdictions, reach out to CDOT and everyone. If you have any grant needs, if you see a grant that you're interested in, if there's just things you want to talk over with Karen, please reach out to her. If you can't reach her, reach out to me and I will get you in touch with her. She is looking, one of the opportunities that she's been looking at pretty heavily is the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, which applications are due mid-June for that one. Also just wanted to mention that the Safe Streets and Roads for All project that PPACG assisted in the coordination for the we assisted in the coordination for the application. It was awarded. Woodland Park is, of course, the sponsor. We're going to be meeting with Woodland Park early next week to talk about releasing that for RFP. And so you may be hearing from us fairly soon regarding, the scope of work there, what that project is going to entail. Basically, that's going to be doing a certified safety action plan for the entire Council of Governments region. That's El Paso, Park, and Teller counties, with the exception of Colorado Springs, since Colorado Springs has its own its own award. Although we may reach out to the city and see if there are any efficiencies that we can.
Yeah, we'd be happy to help.
That would be great. Any other opportunities? There are, of course, a couple of state opportunities listed there as well. I also wanted to point out that Millie Cruz from Drive Clean Colorado did attend our TAC today. If you are interested in any sort of EV related projects, please reach out to Millie or to me, and I'll put you in touch with her. We had a conversation last week or the week before, and she's definitely interested in helping any of our local jurisdictions if there are projects that we can get funded.
Okay, and then Danelle, I do want to add, there is a grant that did open, but it's missing from your list. It's the Chrissy grant. It's a consolidated rail infrastructure
Yes.
and safety improvements. So that came out almost 3 weeks ago now, and that is due May 28th. And it's important to point out that that grant program now has the crossing elimination component in it, which used to be a standalone grant. And I think all of us have rail crossings if ultimately we'd like to be able to eliminate if we had the opportunity to do so. If you haven't done so, please take a look at that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For some reason, I was thinking that was before the previous TAC, but yeah, that's a big one.
Thank you. All right. Let's go on to the next item on the agenda. Sorry, I actually was trying to bring the meeting up on a different screen so I could see people's names a little bit better, so I apologize. We're going to move on to item 9, any items for future TAC meetings.
I do have an update on an item we had planned to bring back to you. So we had talked, I believe 2 months ago, about the development of a greenhouse gas target as a federal performance measure. At this time, there are some lawsuits going on, specifically the state of Texas and I can't remember the other state, but at this time, CDOT and the state of Colorado are not going to be developing greenhouse gas targets. And we will just let you know when and if we need to revisit that.
Oh, okay, great. One topic, and I don't know exactly where we are in the legislation, maybe Lynn, you can help me with this, but one of the proposed bills, it's either the vulnerable users or the AVIS, and I believe it's the AVIS one, talks about setting a new safety target. And it would be interesting for us to know what that would mean for sure, because we've had questions as we've looked at the legislation. If it would be a safety target that would only be specific to the state of Colorado, if or how it would be reported in the federal safety targets, and if and how it would have any impact on funding coming to the state of Colorado. So if we could add that in, and I think that would maybe require some research on the PPACG staff as well.
And I think by the time we have the next TAC meeting, the legislative session will be over. So Jared, I'm going to look at you and say, is this something that you can dig up something on and either, well, if you know something now, feel free to rush the podium, or otherwise send out an email to everybody saying, hey, this is the bill that we're talking about. This is understanding. This is the schedule. And this is how you could provide input if you so chose it and did. Yeah.
And I believe it is the Avis bill, but go ahead, Jared.
Yes, I don't remember the bill title and the bill specifically, but I remember Avis as part of the conversation. I do remember safety targets and vulnerable users as part of that conversation. And yes, by the time we meet again, the session will be done. I don't know where that bill is at the moment, but we could look it up.
Yeah, so Jared, I'm going to go ahead and make work for you. I will commit that Jared will do a little research and then send you guys all an email and letting you know what that is. And if we have, in fact, any sort of definition of how that safety impact is different than a federal safety target. I said impact, I don't know, but I meant target.
Right. So thank you for that, because it would have some direct impact on what we do here at the TAC. The other one, just to make you aware, that could have an impact at least on the MPO, and I think you guys were already aware of this, is 1447. Where they would basically require our transit organization to have some kind of different relationship with the MPO, and that is really unclear, but I think that would end up coming back through the TAC as well. So but that's just one we can continue to keep an eye on. We're hoping that there's changes to that.
That was a very long, Jared, you have your microphone there, and so you can correct me. But I think that was a bill that's like 42 pages or something like that, and has has multi-facets to it. So I believe that our board of directors has already taken an opposed position based on some of the. No. Was it a monitor? No, I got them mixed up.
No, that was the bill that they took and opposed. We go to the board. There was one vote. There was one board
Oh.
member who gave an opposition. So right now PPCG has no position on that one, but that is the RTD.
Right,
1447.
37 of the 40 pages are RTD, and then at the end, oh, by the way, we're gonna pull everyone else
then-
in, and it's all gonna go tied to the MPO
And they
in a
started,
different way.
yes, they added all those things. So what we did is, and thank you for correcting me. What we did is we sent something out saying, looks like everybody that was present at the meeting wanted to oppose it. I believe strongly oppose was their wording. But then part of our process is the legislative committee cannot do something unilaterally, so it was sent out to the board of directors. There was one member of the board of directors that did not concur with the position, and our rule at this moment is that it has to be unanimous. So currently, we have no position. Next time the board meets, which could be a special board meeting just to address this topic, they may very well take that position. And I would assume at that point they would oppose it because again, yeah, there's like 42 pages of let's do this stuff to RTD. And then at the end, they did stuff that they were just sort of throwing in that literally makes no sense and has nothing sort of to do with the germane issues of the bill. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right.
Very good. Very good.
Well, anyway, I think that maybe if you could help us just follow up on those two topics, because they could have a significant impact on both the TAC and the MPO as a whole.
Yep. And for the record, that other bill we were referring to, I looked it up. That's Senate Bill 195. That's scheduled for second reading. Well, it's going to second reading, has not been scheduled yet.
Great, thank you. Any other topics or announcement member governments want to make? Yes, go ahead.
Just wanted to inform everybody that we had an opportunity on Monday to meet with PPACG, with Danielle, John, and Jared. We talked to our military installations in the local area, the space-based Delta One planners from Peterson, Schriever, and Cheyenne Mountain, and we provided some inputs to help inform the long-range transportation plan. That's all.
Well, great. Did your top priority come up as a new interchange at Peterson and Platt Avenue? And there might be a DSIP grant application that we could probably use your help on?
I think it was discussed.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right, anything else? All right, hearing nothing, I'm going to call the meeting to adjournment at 2:52. Oh, thank you. First, I thought John was going to say the meeting is adjourned, John.